like now to introduce a good friend of MHCS, Lee Hubba. Lee Hubba started his career in the music industry in New Zealand and has been involved in media production since the 80s. Since he arrived in 1988, he has worked extensively in community and public radio. And before he started with ING, he worked with Arts Radio in Perth, the Public Broadcasting Association of Australia, now CBAA, and SBS Radio. Please join me in welcoming Lee Hubba.
So from that introduction, I'm celebrating a quarter century in multicultural media. And look, it's a... thanks for the invitation to speak here. There's been a lot of these forums and conferences over the 25 years that I've worked in this area, but they're so important now when things are changing so fast and opportunities are changing so fast for communications. And the opportunity to work with Multicultural Health Service is some of the most interesting projects we work on. We are on Darug land, and I acknowledge the elders past and present. My company, Spots in Space, partners with more than 600 media outlets as their sales representative, including every in-language radio station except for SBS, the best newspapers, websites, and magazines. And really, if I had one message to impart at a forum like this, it's that each community is different. Each community has a unique migration story. They have a different mix of available media, and they interact differently with it. This means that for each community, you can optimize your communications by choosing the best balance of media for that community. And if resources allow, unique content actually tailored to that specific community. In this world of print media, radio, television, internet, other media, and your own media, how do you strike a balance of the media to use? Let's see. The great news is that Australia is rich in local and national media for even the smallest and most recently arrived communities. Any involvement with other countries and their diversity of media, Australia is a world leader. Nationally, look, here's some numbers. 151 radio stations, 185 print titles, more than 200 television stations, websites, other media, and your own media provide a full set of tools for you to achieve those communications goals. Great numbers, it changes all the time. I'm not even sure that that's the most up-to-date. We're finding new radio stations, new websites all the time. There's commercial newspaper businesses, radio stations, pay TV businesses, SBS, the community sector, at least 80 called languages in New South Wales. And many more communities, of course, because communities are not only defined by language. The large communities, like Chinese and Arabic, have a diversity of competition in every sector, in magazines and TV, multiple radio stations. But even the smaller communities, such as some recent stations we've started working with, 2 new Punjabi stations in Australia, a new Persian station full-time in Australia, and now so many dedicated websites. Understanding what consumers want out of their in-language media is the first step to analysing media selection. Entertainment, and especially music, has a strong ethno-specific element that you won't find in mainstream Australian media. I'm not hearing the Greek music on Smooth FM or Nova. If you've recently arrived in a new country, you'll be eager for information that allows you to navigate day-to-day life. We do that when we travel, so imagine migrating. If you don't speak English well, you'll definitely want to do that in your preferred language and get local news that way as well. And you may want your children to understand your culture and language. This took me ages to learn the software. The larger the bubble, the bigger the community. The higher up on the left-hand scale, the least proficiency in English, and the further along this scale, the most recently arrived. If you've got a big bubble that's high up on both scales, Mandarin Chinese, they are great consumers of multicultural media, and you see it. You see it in the number of newspapers, the number of radio stations, the plethora of TV stations that come in by satellite as well as are locally fed. But even a community that has great English language skills, such as some of the subcontinental communities, are still recently arrived. They still need media for cultural reasons. They still need media for local information reasons, networking reasons, all sorts. So this chart, which I think will be circulated, is the two main drivers that are real gotchas in terms of what things might drive a consumer towards their own multicultural media. The good news is that multicultural media in Australia is really successful. This is a McNair Ingenuity study that we co-subscribed to, originally done for SBS. 75% of Greek-speaking people in Australia, and if you can imagine, Greek people speak 2, 3, maybe even 4 generations of Greek speakers. 3 in 4 of them consume TV in Greek, radio in Greek, newspapers in Greek. And even 46% Spanish speakers consume media. Any commercial media in Australia that had those sort of numbers would consider themselves very, very successful. I'm mindful, I'll do that later. If we take people 55 plus, i.e. first generation migrants in the main, the reach is even greater. And this demonstrates how first generation migrants are great consumers of their media. But it also, with those numbers, you have to assume that the media reaches successfully to second and possibly in some communities third generations. I think what's interesting about this chart as well is the Koreans, which is a more recently arrived younger community. The 55 plus segment isn't very great. A lot of the migrants are under, first generation migrants are under 55. So they are the greater, by component, consumers of multicultural media. When I was saying that different communities consume in different ways because of their background, a classic is a lot of the Arabic-speaking communities are not literate in Arabic, so electronic media, TV and radio, is much stronger than press in that community. The converse, Chinese communities, very good education systems, great number of newspapers, and the Chinese community is much more focused on press and that burgeoning press segment. And I should say here that these figures do not include SBS radio. In Vietnamese in particular, SBS radio is the strongest single outlet for Vietnamese, so that would lift the radio figure and the overall figure much higher. We just don't have access to that number, but we know it's very, very high. Media planners are used to competition. Who's the winner? Who's got the biggest ratings? In most multicultural languages, there's little or no competition. This is a demonstration of Samoan radio in Sydney. The stations are sympathetic enough to not overlap programming. So if you're a Samoan consumer, you can listen to every one of those physically, where you can't watch 2 TV channels at the same time. So the old paradigm of who's the best doesn't count here. If you were to advertise on all of those stations in a week, you wouldn't spend a lot of money, but you'd be up there with Coca-Cola in terms of brand recognition. A few years ago, sensibly, we went out and had a look at what websites were strong in communities. We looked for various interactive elements, Web 2 elements, forums, updated content and so forth, to identify what we thought were the best ones, and then we invited them to be audited. These are the ones that we invited for auditing. There's some more, there's quite a plethora of languages, and we're finding new ones all the time, as I said. The Chinese and Korean websites, 5,000 to 6,000 unique browsers every day. What I love in this chart, well, actually I love Muslim Village because it's a great website because the guy who runs it is really is reported in wider media all the time. He's the go-to guy for the ABC for any Muslim issues. But the one I love here is Natui, a rather small community. They're achieving 2,000 unique browsers every day. And with the Audited Media Association of Australia, 3 of those websites were in their top 10 websites audited. For some communities, there's simply no effective medium that reaches the desired market. That's the time to look out for what I call other media that might do the job, such as these Gold Coast shopper lights, because Western Union wanted us to target New Zealanders on the Gold Coast. Scott analysed the census, found out where the greatest concentration of New Zealanders were. We went to that shopping centre, bought the shopper lights, and that does the job for them. Similarly, we might look for outdoor signs near a church or a culturally relevant supermarket. So you've got to look for solutions that are well beyond the media when you do the sort of job we do and that you do. Most messages intended for a non-English speaking audience are very effective translations of an English language message. Because what is a translation but not a cultural rewrite of your original creative? It can't be anything but. If resources do allow, I encourage you to develop the message in the intended language of your message. If you do that, you're likely to bring some cultural values that resonated with the intended recipient that will be more effective advertising. And there's lots of examples of this out of multicultural health. This is one that I've played a number of times, but it's a great rendition. It's one we produced with Multicultural Marketing and Management for Scratchies, written and performed in original Arabic, and you'll hear it, it could never have been developed in English. Advertising on in-language media is only one way of delivering your message. There's so many other ways. Press releases or prepackaged stories. Make sure you make it easy for the publisher by translating that story, or record it and distribute it as a packaged interview, or a CSA, if it genuinely is a CSA. Find out who in your workforce or network is a native speaker of a non-English language. Give them media training, brief them, and get them out there talking up your campaign in the media. Better still, if you can get a regular column or a radio spot, or get them posting stories on blogs, forums, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, even Weibo or WeChat. You're all publishers. We all are. If you have a Facebook page, even in the days when we put out brochures and posters, we're publishers. And it's an increasingly crowded space. Our in-language videos can attract a disappointingly small number of views. Yet the recent Learning Potential app, which was the subject of a large national advertising campaign, earned 63,000 downloads of that app in 2 weeks. So it's the combination of media that will create that channel for you. And if you can make it work, your social media platforms will be enormously cost-effective and powerful ways of communicating with your consumers. The prize of your own media channel, and I could cite a number, but the one that comes to mind here is New South Wales, Multicultural New South Wales email link. What a powerful channel to inform the communities that is. And the investment of money and resources building that channel through advertising and promotions is well worth it. So every community is different, and it is each community that has a unique combination of media and content tools for you to be successful. Do I have time just to do a couple more minutes? Finally, who says that government messages aren't interesting? I just want to play this video. It was Show Pony, an agency out of Adelaide that produced a video for the Ambos in South Australia. There's no cats, no nudity, there's no celebrities embarrassing themselves, resulting in a 45% reduction in violent incidents in the first 2 months. For that campaign, all the budget went into that content. Because it was so successful, they didn't need a media budget. They won the advertising lottery, which, from my observation, seems to be called now breaking the internet. So there's never been more ways to reach your culturally and linguistically diverse consumers, and I suggest you use them all. Thank you.